That's what that was.
Just 4 seconds of a woman messing up. That's all we need to start our show.
that gets the stream off on good spirits.
4 seconds
I was telling
of woman
you,
messing
we
up
like to
compared to 2 hours of ant messing up.
Well, there you go. We like to start off teasing the ladies a little. It weeds out the sensitive ones. And Rob just told me we have 17% of our audience is women. I think most YouTube shows are like 60-40. We only have like...
We started off 60-40.
Yeah, and we are down to 17% female audience, which for those 17% of the women that stick around, that is, I mean, you have something to brag about because you're not sensitive. So we wanted to get Pinesap on tonight because they're... I'm trying to understand the generational divide. Now, we usually have Nick Cavazos on, but Nick Cavazos is like your hardcore SSPX, uber trad. And
he's an old soul that carries a single action army revolver.
Yeah, he's also got like some real American roots, man. His grandfather was in, what was he? He's like I forget what position he held in the
He was the Secretary of Education under Reagan.
Like unbelievable credentials that kid has. But yeah, I wanted to see if, because we talk about it a lot, there's this weird divide. I think a lot of it is generational. I know a lot of it, and we have a lot of like groypers that watch our show all the time. I want to understand the Fuentes angle of it. I want to understand the Pope Francis is the most base pope ever thing. But before we get into any of that, first off, do you share your real name online, or do you just stick with Pinesap?
I just stick with Pinesap just to not get doxxed or anything like that. It's just kind of a safety thing.
Where'd you come up with that name? What put that name up?
So I've lived in Colorado all my life, and I grew up around pine trees. And so when I was a little kid, I would just like go out in the forest and like, play games in the woods or whatever, play tag with my friends, or like we throw pine cones at each other till our arms started to bleed or something. So from that experience that I had as a kid, I kind of just conjured up the name Pinesap with the help of my friend Spexo. Because I was like, okay, I want some like Colorado reference to my name. And I thought I wanted to be called Pine Sol Groiper or what have you. And Spexo comes in, he's like, dude, just call yourself Pinesap. He's like, that's a cool name. It's short. It makes your own identity. I'm like, I love it, dude. This is a great name.
The first time you came across my radar, you were on Gordon's show. Like you did something with Gordon, I don't know if it was a couple of years ago or something, but yeah, that was the first time you came across my radar. Then I think I started seeing things getting tense between like the trads and the younger guys. And I remember blocking Christian Wagner, and I blocked Catholic Orca. I like you guys were like annoying me so much. And then like I had a change of heart when I realized, all right, these guys are young guys. They're coming into the faith, and they're just expressing their faith differently than I am. I know they don't have the same perspective. Maybe they also don't have the same history I have from it. So I unblocked all you guys, and you guys have all grown on me. Like every one of you have grown on.
Was that before or after you got into it with Pinesap?
It was after. It was. Yeah, like I was, dude. Even Patty on Twitter, I had him blocked for like, I don't know. I must have been like super sensitive or something. Like when somebody would annoy me, I would just block them. And I don't know. I went through a phase like that. And then I just started like,
that happens.
I'm like, why am I doing this? It's just silly. So before we get into the debate or anything, or like conversations like that, like what was your upbringing? Were you raised Catholic? Did you have a conversion later on? Not like a full conversion story, but just kind of like a quick snapshot.
Yeah. So I was not raised Catholic at all. And I was not raised really around a whole heck of a lot of Catholics. I mean, any Catholics in my life were lapsed Catholics who hadn't gone to mass in years, right?
Yeah.
The last mass they went to was like their confirmation when they were like 12, right? And because of that, I grew up in a very evangelical county, and I kind of credit the evangelicals for at least helping me keep some semblance of a faith. But I came from an Episcopalian family.
Oh,
and,
okay.
I mean, if you know Episcopalianism, Rob and Anthony, it's a garbage fire.
Yeah.
It's so horrible. I mean, like, women priestesses and gay marriage and all that kind of stuff. Oh, by the way, if I get a little too heated with anything I say, just, let me know. I want to respect the TOS of YouTube for you guys, but
yeah, that's all. Just stay within the YouTube guidelines, but I don't care.
Awesome.
As long as you say,
Okay, awesome.
Anthony will be the one to break them anyway.
yeah.
Let's go. But yeah, I mean that was what I was raised with. And then when I was kind of in middle school, I got into like white people Buddhism, right? Like I was like, oh, I'm like one with everything. I want to be one with everything. I didn't renounce my faith in Christ, but I thought that you could be like reincarnated or go to heaven. I was theologically illiterate. I didn't know what I was talking about. And when I was in my sophomore year of high school, I had an existential crisis. Like I was like, my life doesn't have any meaning. The sun's going to explode and I'm going to die and all this is going to be forgotten. And it was honestly kind of my introduction into politics because of Gamergate that I started hearing people
You're going to
talk
have to
about
explain
God.
that to Anthony.
No, I know what
Okay.
Gamergate is.
Okay,
No way,
you know what
really?
Gamergate is?
Yeah, I know what Gamergate is.
Yeah. So, I mean, I
No,
was
wait,
totally...
I don't want to get too deep into it. Gamer, all right, yeah, just continue your story. There's a lot of people in the audience won't know, but
yeah, I mean, essentially, it was just like, us gamers, right? The most oppressed class in the entire world. We were just trying to play our video games, and like all these feminists were coming in, and they're like, "You need to make a space for women and LGBT people and stuff like that." And we're like, "What the heck is going on?" Right?
Yeah.
So, we started off cringe libertarians. Now we're like fanatics that would give like ISIS.
What year was this? That was like 2015.
Yeah, 2015. So
2015. So it's right around the time of the Trump election. You got this is how I think is how like Milo came into people's vision and things like that. Like 2015 was a wild year. I remember Gamergate really. It was kind of like a catalyst almost for the culture.
It really was because like kids before that didn't really want to be politically involved. They were very libertarian. They were just like, do what you will. I want to be left alone. I just want to enjoy my creature comforts, my bread and circuses. And it was like, as you said, Anthony, like everything kind of blew up at that time. And I think people got thrown into politics whether they liked it or not.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it was like I got thrown in and I started hearing people talk about scripture more and talk about the Bible. So I was like, I was going to read the Bible for myself. And when I open up the Bible, I'm blown away that every single thing that I'm reading applies to my life perfectly in a way that is heavenly, in a way that is otherworldly. It's not like a philosophy book. It's not a self-help book, but it is something like speaking to me in a way as if, God had been here this entire time with me. And from there, I just said, I want to be a devout Christian. And so from there, I abandoned the Episcopalian stuff upon instantly learning that they dissented from scripture. I said that I was a more like conservative Anglican for many years, leading up to like my freshman year in college. And then I still remember this day, I was sitting in a coffee shop with one of my best friend, James, who's becoming a priest. And I told him, James, I'm never going to become Catholic, dude. Next year, he's my confirmation sponsor.
So what's the catalyst? What makes you? Was it him or was it?
So do you really want to know what the catalyst was?
Yeah,
it was the Bible, and it was realizing that I had 7 books removed from my Bible, dude. I was pissed when I learned that. I was steamed because like I kind of at that time was just a very like almost sola scriptura kind of guy. I'm like, look, the world's corrupt, people are corrupt. All I know I can trust is the Bible, right? That's the only trustworthy source. And then when I realized, like, wait, Protestant Bibles have 7 books removed, 7 books of scripture, Holy Scripture itself. God breathed, God wrote those words, right? And they're not in my Bible. I got so angry that I called my friend Mike on the phone, who was also very, very influential in my conversion. And I had my head down in my hands and I'm like, Mike, buddy, you just got to level with me. Is it true? Is it true? Do I have 7 books removed from my Bible? And he's like, yes, Pinesap, you do. And then I put down the phone. And I'm like, I'm not Protestant anymore.
Wow. That's
right at that moment. I'm like, I'm done.
It's funny, like the things that God uses to light that spark in us, So, okay. So what year was this?
So that much, I've been Catholic for, I think 3 years now. So that was, I want to say 2020. That was 2020.
So, like during COVID.
COVID, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so during COVID, I was
23 now, right? Like, so you're about 20 years old, 19, 20 years old, and this is all going down.
Yeah, well, and it feels like I've been Catholic for 4 years because I basically wanted to be Catholic for almost an entire year before I officially converted. Like, I in that moment, I mean, that was like spring when that happened, like March 2020. And I became Catholic, that Easter 2021. And so literally that entire time, like, I just was like, the church is the truth. Like, I
Yeah.
have no way to rebut this. And I quite literally, I would watch like entire like Dr. Taylor Marshall videos, like his Aquinas Academy videos. And he just would say these incredible things that like I couldn't rebut. I remember going on a forum looking up reasons why I should be Anglican. And I kid you not, the guy on that forum is like, so listen, I'm an atheist, but I go to Anglican liturgies because I
Yeah.
like the pomp and splendor.
It's
And I'm like,
a
I'm
social,
out.
it's a
I'm out. I'm
social
not
club.
Anglican
It's a
anymore.
social club with some pretty ceremony.
Legit.
Yeah.
And really at that point, it was just like God showed me this perfect truth that I just could not rebut in like any way, shape, or form. I was like, every single question I had was being answered. Every single question, the most obscure facts and knowledge, I could find it somewhere in a book or some theologian or some priest wrote about it. And it was just insane to me.
So what is the route of catechesis you take? So you said you watch like some older Taylor Marshall, not like his current event stuff, like you were watching his catechetical stuff, right?
Believe it or not,
I
was watching his Tim videos he used to do with Tim as well.
With TNT, yeah.
And they were kind of entertaining in a way. I have a weird nostalgia for them and stuff like that, just because of their chemistry. But I was watching that. Ironically, I was actually watching Church Militant at that time too.
I think everybody was.
And I watched so many episodes, especially when I was dishwashing, that I would be able to imitate the Michael Vortex opening. I was like,
yeah.
hello, I'm Michael Voris, and you're watching the Vortex. And he always had like the pennies.
Where
like,
lies and falsehoods.
Yeah, lies and
Trapped and
falsehoods are spun out. And really at that time, it was that Trent Horn, Patrick Coffin, when we was a part of Catholic Answers and doing the Patrick Coffin show on YouTube. And they gave me sort of this formation of just being like, dude, like this history is deep and rich. And I'm learning about things I never even knew about, right? Like, truths about the inerrancy of scripture or the sort of integrity of like the infallibility of the church or even the Pope during like pivotal points in history and stuff like that. And I'm like, only like a divine church could be protected like that. Because I was used to, in Anglicanism, like, look, they have a new schism every like 5 years, right? Like, even the conservative ones, like even ACNA, they just elected some bishop that's like ordaining women and stuff like that. And it's like, that's supposed to be the conservative group, right?
Yeah.
So I was used to like just an absolute garbage fire. Like the ship is going down and we don't know where the Church of God is. And because of that, I was like, this just makes sense that like pertaining to when St. Paul writes about like the pillar and ground of truth, right? The church is the pillar and ground of truth. And, Jesus talking about in Matthew 18:17, like, whatever this church declares, like, is my will. So if you cast a brother out and he's a tax collector and a heathen onto you, like, that's my will. It just made so much sense that Catholicism was true at that point.
Yeah. Somebody made a comment about my low-cut shirt. If anybody would like this low-cut shirt, it says, have you accepted
Awesome.
Mary as your personal mother and intercessor?
Or avoiding pride.
Yeah.
Nice.
Go to
I
our
love
merch
that
store.
shirt.
This shirt, honestly, is like my favorite freaking shirt I've ever had in my life. I don't know why anybody would not want that shirt.
It's such a Catholic dad shirt.
Well, it's really a Protestant troll shirt because that's the whole thing. It's, have you accepted Jesus as your personal Lord and Savior? No. Of course, obviously, but have you accepted Mary as your personal mother and intercessor? So that also hit like, subscribe. Wow, we got a decent audience. And okay, so this is around 2020. You're coming about this whole thing over the next few years. You're checking out most of your catechesis is on like YouTube. You're watching Catholic Answers stuff. You're seeing Tim TNT shows, things like that. So you're coming from this insane background where it almost does seem stable even under Francis for you, right? Like you like I think that's where a lot of the younger guys, they're having their conversions around, because like even I think the kid Catholic Orca, like he's very young too. I think he's maybe 20 years old or something. Christian Wagner's in his early 20s. So I'm assuming you guys all kind of come in over like under Francis. Like this is the only pope you've ever had in your lifetime, really, right?
Yeah, well, and I mean, I was not a Pope Francis fan when I was coming to church by any means. I actually I would get like red in the face towards Pope Francis. I was angry. I thought he was like I thought he was like Pope Benedict the Ninth on steroids, right? And I would get super, super, super angry. I actually didn't mention this, but at the time I even was very much had a very strong affinity towards the SSPX. In fact, before I even became Catholic, I think this was actually during November or December, I had a Zoom call with Father Paul Robinson because his church, his chapel, St. Isidore in the Field is out in Watkins, Colorado. And I mean, he was huge. He did the Crisis in the Church series and stuff like that. I became very familiar with kind of his presence online, and we had like a great discussion, stuff like that. And I mean, I always say it like this, like I would read 1 Peter 5 or I'd read The Remnant before I would ever read anything put out by the Vatican. So
wow, this is interesting. I didn't know any of this. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I read and watched Michael Matt like all the time. 1 Peter 5, Timothy Flanders and stuff like that, which I honestly, even though I'm not really a 1 Peter 5 reader anymore, I still like Timothy Flanders. He's awesome. Yeah. He's a great guy.
You want to know what's interesting? So when I had my conversion,
hard not to love Tim.
It's hard not to love Tim. He really is.
That's so real.
He's the most charitable, lovable guy. When I had my conversion, I remember seeing remnant videos and being like, what is this? So I would come across remnant videos and not even know what the heck, because it would all be like talking about the Latin Mass and the Novus Ordo. And I was like, what are they even talking about? Then I remember coming across the Diamond Brothers stuff. And I remember arguing with the Diamond Brothers in their comment section because they would be bashing Benedict. Like this was under Benedict, and they'd be bashing Benedict, and I would be doing what the younger guys now are doing with the Diamond Brothers, and I'd be like, but they have the power to bind and loose. What are you talking about? And I would be throwing scripture at them, and he'd be like, do you want to debate me right now? Like, I'll kill you. like literally arguing with the Diamond Brothers in their chat. And I had no idea what was going on. So this is interesting to me that, okay, so you actually come in through more of a traditional angle and you kind of settled into, I'm assuming you start coming across the Lofton stuff and you go, okay, maybe there's another side to this, right?
Well, it's interesting. So when I first encountered Lofton, I liked his like, sort of his guest videos, right? Where he like have people on, some like writer for like Oxford Press or something. But I actually did not like him. I like loathed him. I was like, he's a bogus ordo apologist and stuff like that. Like, what does he know? And I actually really what did it all for me was, I would watch Michael Matt all the time. And I love to do the impression of how all his shows like open up. It's always this like Bergoglio and his Pac-Man Mama parade are taking over the Deep Vatican, and he's like in the like catacombs, like set and stuff like that. It just would crack me up. But, I was attending St. Isidore's that summer because I finally had a friend who could drive me and stuff like that. Because from where I live, Watkins is a very far away, but we were willing to make the drive. And I actually remember when Traditionis Custodes dropped, and I had like a crisis in faith. I was like, man, I don't know. Did I convert too fast? Did I not discern like other churches that might have been true? I was even at this time, I mean, Jay Dyer was on the rise too, and I didn't know anything about Eastern Orthodoxy because I was very kind of dismissive of it from the outset. I was like, I don't know, is Eastern Orthodoxy true? I mean, he's saying all these things about the papacy I've never heard before. And what kind of did me in was I actually watched the debate between him and Eric. And Eric just like pancaked the guy. Like he just utterly destroyed the guy. He made him look silly and stupid. So
wait, which debate was this?
Eric Ybarra's debate with Jay Dyer. He totally crushed him.
Okay, go.
Totally crushed him. I mean, everyone, all the ortho bros are like, he talks like Bluto from Popeye. How did he win the debate or whatever? But it's like, if you look at that debate and see what he's slinging out, like Eric crushed Jay emphatically.
I love Eric Ibarra.
Eric's awesome. He's a great man and incredibly knowledgeable. Oh my goodness. It's like there's a big old library up in that head or something. But from watching that debate, I said, okay, well, I know Eastern Orthodoxy is not true. I kind of was dismissive of sedevacantism, to be honest, because I'm like, I know sedevacantism isn't true. You're telling me the one true church is out in some chapel in Wichita, Kansas? Like, come on. That's like Anglicanism 2.0, So I was kind of a little dismissive of that. And I had seen some things debunking it from like John Salza and stuff like that.
Not just that. I'll tell you what the sedevacantist biggest dilemma is sedevacantists. So I actually watched a video today. This guy was actually breaking down a video of Rob and I. It was it's funny because our last video was kind of like me just like pouring my heart out, just being like, I don't know what the hell's going on. I must have said, I don't know 8,000 times in that video. It was so hard to watch clips of me saying it.
Did you say that more or less than you said like?
I probably more, which is crazy because I do say like an awful lot. It was just kind of just an honest me just saying like, guys, I just don't know, man. Like, but the sedevacantist tip. So it was actually a really charitable video, which is very unique from a sedevacantist vantage point because most sedevacantists are unbearable. Did you what did you say, Rob?
Who was it? I haven't heard.
I think on Twitter it's Saint Anthony of Padua, but he was just like, he was like, hey, I kind of enjoyed the honesty these guys brought this episode where they were just like, I kind of don't know, which I was annoyed by me saying that, but now I'm going to be worried that I'm not giving a good interview. So, I don't even know where I was going with this. Oh, so that last episode was kind of me doing that. And now I want to find a way to keep communication open with everybody still, which is what we talked about in that last episode. Right. And also trying to understand the perspective of people that don't see it the way I see it. So, even having this conversation with you is me trying to understand because when I see phrases like Francis is the most based pope ever, I'm trying to understand if that's cope, if that's just a Gen Z meme, kind of like trying to own people, or if people genuinely think Francis is the most based pope ever, because it's coming from more of a background where Rob and I come from. I actually grew up, like I said, arguing with Peter Diamond and his thing, right? Then coming across remnant stuff and being like, what the heck is this? Because I was so gung-ho for the Catholicism of JP2 and Benedict XVI and this whole idea of a hermeneutic of continuity and this reform of the reform idea. And then Francis came around and it kind of like shattered everything I thought. And it was like you said, you had a crisis of faith. Like I had a legit crisis of faith under Francis. I left the sacraments for a period and then came back and found a more balanced way to see things because I saw how my life fell apart without the sacraments. Now, I'm wondering how you work that out, right? So you said you had this crisis of faith when Traditionis comes out. So how do you wind up working that out?
So I kind of had talked a little bit before. I was going through all the things in my mind, right? Eastern Orthodoxy is not true. I know Protestantism isn't true. I know that, like, I'm going back baby steps. I'm like, I know Christ is real. I know he rose again from the dead. I know he established a church that I need to be a part of. Just the question of which church. So I'm going through all these options, and I dismissed, as we just talked, said Eastern Orthodox, and I was like, okay, well, my issue with the recognize and resist position, and my issue sort of the SSPX is, Novus Ordo Watch doesn't do a lot that's good in terms of someone who is consistent in their theology defending the papacy. Someone like I was about to say Roberto de Mattei, Dr. Robert Festigi, I think would be a good example. Like, it'd be hard for Novus Ordo Watch to take a guy like, Dr. Robert Festici, but they were writing these articles and I was reading them where they're like, well, Dr. Peter Kay will write this article about how ultramontanism is a heresy, and then they'll go through the history of the church and they'll bring up like a quote from Umberto Benini, right, from the Catholic Encyclopedia, and then they'll hit him with another quote being like, here's what it means to be a loyal son of the church. And I was seeing just this sort of like discordant view in theology between the recognize and resist position and sort of being a Catholic. And so I'm like, okay, if that's not the case or the route that I can take, what's sort of the final option? And I think to myself, maybe my presuppositions about this whole issue were wrong, right? And from there, I read a couple people who, in my mind, are true traditionalists. Dietrich von Hildebrand. There's a guy named James Larson who wrote a fantastic book, War Against the Papacy, and he's fully traditional. He's a traditional guy, loves the TLM. I think he even went to the TLM before he died. And all these things lined up, but he defended Vatican II and defended St. John Paul II, even like the Assisi gathering and stuff like that, being like, yeah, like some imprudent things went on. That's okay to say. We don't need to be blind about, there was definitely some imprudent things, but like, here's how St. John Paul II wasn't like, oh, all religions are salvific or whatever.
Yeah.
And the more and more I read and the more I consumed sort of that literature, and I was starting to reconsider people I otherwise had kind of just dismissed.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, I want to be in the lockstep with the Council Fathers of the First Vatican Council. Now, that sounds a little nerdy. Let me explain what I mean. All these men I admired, these traditionalists who literally battled the modern world, who, were thrown out of their churches during the takeover of the papal states and stuff like that, sometimes martyred, right? Like Archbishop George Darboy was martyred in the Paris Commune. These men I admired and loved so much. Like they had inspired me to want to be a better Catholic. And I'm like, what's their theology? Well, they were ultramontanists. They fully defended the tradition of the church. They would die defending the tradition of the church. I will die defending the tradition of the church. I would rather my this sounds intense. I'd rather my throat be slit and my blood be drained like a pig than ever give up any of the traditions of the church.
Yeah.
And while they had that attitude, they didn't see it discordant with being obedient to the Pope. They actually saw it as being an all-inclusive thing, because fundamentally, not of any rationalist like idea or principle, but because they understood the Holy Spirit protects and confirms the church. And the more and more I started to go into like papal apologetics, especially, and I would read like Dom Prosper Granger's book, like The Papal Monarchy, I was starting to see this whole almost mystical and this whole spiritual dimension to everything in the life of the church and church history, and the way that sort of the stormy seas of life try to upend her, only for Christ to say, be still. And from there, I like refound my faith. And I remember I went to my confessor and I said, Father John, I kind of fell away this summer. I was attending the SSPX and stuff like that. And he's like, Pinesap, because Father John's my spiritual father. I love him. And he was
now
like,
he's a Novus Ordo priest.
Yes, he is.
Okay.
And he is.
And you were going to the SSPX, so you actually have experience with the Latin Mass.
Yes, I do.
Okay,
because I gotta say, Our Lady, shout out to Our Lady Mount Carmel in Littleton, Colorado. I love that parish. Father Nolan is a beast.
Yeah. Okay,
he's
because
such a good man.
Okay, so some of the arguments I'm seeing from even Christian Wagner, which I like Christian, but I think he doesn't understand. So you come in and like you have a very youthful faith, man. Like it's very new, like regardless of how you look at it. Like it's only 4 years old, so when you're talking about some of us who have had like, so we were raised, I would consider myself a JP2 Catholic, so the things that I have a very high view of John Paul II and Benedict, and it wasn't really challenged until 2017. Like I still have like a nostalgia for those guys. I'll still not want to bash either one of them. I love both of them, even though I recognize a lot of the mistakes they made and stuff. But then to discover the traditional mass after attending Novus Ordo for years, telling myself, like, at every mass the saints and angels are present and you're representing the sacrifice at Calvary, while not actually experiencing that, well, not actually seeing it experientially, I guess you would say, at the Novus Ordo, right? And then all of a sudden I discover the traditional Latin Mass and these pieces click together and it's like, whoa, this is the sacrifice of the Mass. And I'm starting to see Catholic theology actually make sense in the liturgy itself. So now that we're all getting these rumors of this new clampdown on the traditional Mass, I almost think guys that have a traditional Novus Ordo or guys who don't have any experience with the traditional Latin Mass, when they say things like anyone who would leave the church over a liturgy was never a real Catholic, and just dismissing people's actual real devotion and love for the traditional Mass, it's almost a disconnect because they don't actually have experience. So I actually respect that you have experience with the traditional liturgy, right? So hearing guys say, just dismiss it like you're going to leave the church over the liturgy. No. You have to understand, there were men who died over this liturgy. You know, like this is you're talking about, especially during the Protestant Reformation, as England is changing over to the Cranmer table and things like that. There are Catholics who died for this liturgy, and there are Catholics now who have fallen in love with this liturgy and have it yanked away by Francis. I can empathize with people who are just like, what are you doing? It's a really crazy time in the church, man. I mean, I always try to show empathy towards all positions and try to see it from everybody's position, but I hate when anybody just dismisses somebody because they don't see it exactly how they do, you know?
Oh, of course. Well, and you know, like when I would say like things like leaving the church over the TLM or something is stupid or something like that. Yeah, I still do affirm that position, but that being said, I still do have a compassion and understanding for, the TLM has played such a huge role in people's lives. And even in my life, I love the TLM actually. I'm not anti-TLM. I actually, believe it or not, I have a big beef, and I would almost argue a bigger problem with where Peter is than I even do any trad publication, for lack of a better term.
Now
The
Mike
reason
Lewis is
why,
going to show up.
yeah,
Yeah, if you even mention him, he shows up.
I'm not a fan of that gentleman, to be quite honest. And the reason why is because, their publication slanders faithful Catholics. I mean, like pretending like everyone who goes to Fraternity St. Peter Mass is a new Martin Luther or Dolinger or whatever, right? And, just berating these people, but then they'll write these endless fluff pieces about how this guy who says that like gay is okay or whatever. Well, here's actually how this dissident liberal theologian didn't really mean that, and we should have charity for him, right? But then they'll have zero charity for someone who's a completely faithful Catholic, completely obedient Catholic, and attends the traditional Latin Mass. And I call BS on that, quite frankly. I don't wish Mike Lewis any ill will or anything like that.
Yeah, no, I understand that. All right, so
it's frustrating,
somebody said it here actually, which is I actually really like that comment. Okay, so how did you get to base Francis though? Like that's still a big jump, right? So now, is the whole meme Francis is the most base pope ever? Is it a meme, or do you genuinely mean it? I mean, are you being realistic in something like that? Do you not recognize there's something different about Francis than any pope we've ever had before? Or
yeah. So what I would say about that is, Zoomers, we love our irony, we love our jokes, we love our memes. So there is a level of irony to it. Like, personally in the modern era, I think the most base pope ever is like St. Pius X. He's one of my favorite popes and stuff like that. And so, saying Pope Francis is the most base pope
I think it's
ever,
Alexander the Sixth, but we'll leave that for another.
But the rhetorical effect of saying Pope Francis is the most base pope ever is us trying to stand up when people are like okay, but Bergoglio, he's on the throne,
Yeah.
and you need to admit he's an apostate and stuff like that. And we say, no, we love Pope Francis. And in fact, Pope Francis is the most spaced Pope ever. Not that I personally think that Pope Francis is the most spaced Pope ever.
Yeah.
That,
So
that,
it's
that
a
is
meme.
meant to
It's
be
a meme.
ironic.
You're going for you're seeing Pope bashing going on, and it's like, all right, look, like we're still Catholic, and because I can understand the position. Like I can totally understand the position of, hey, we're Catholic. What are Catholics supposed to do? We're supposed to be obedient to the Pope. Like that. All the trads who just dismiss anybody who wants to be obedient to the Pope. It's like I understand that position, man. I understand that position of you don't want to uncover your father's nakedness. I understand it. It's a very Catholic ideal, right? Somebody had said to me the other day, I was joking around about cradle Catholics and converts. And somebody was like, yeah, well, cradle Catholics allow communion in the hand. They allowed all this stuff. And I said, yeah, well, you have to understand the Catholic instinct is obedience, right? So if your bishop is telling you communion in the hand, we're changing the liturgy. The Catholic instinct is, hey, my bishop is telling me this is okay. I want to be, the Pope and the bishops are saying this. I'm going to follow this. This is the genuine Catholic instinct, right? The idea of what we're going through now is it almost seems like the converts came in and gave this rebellious attitude. So but me as a cradle Catholic, seeing what's going on, my heart is ripped apart, and I'm just like, I just want to be Catholic. Like, what the heck is going on? I don't know what this disunity is. I don't know what Francis is doing right now. Seems like every single move he makes is trying to push those of us who actually love Christ and his church to want to. It's just such a weird time in the church, man. I'm struggling right now. I don't know. I'm kind of.
Do you think that even like jokingly, seemingly to ignore the realities, at least some of the realities of this pontificate, do you think that can cause damage though at times and for some people?
I think the way that at least we talk about Pope Francis in our circle, I don't see it cause damage, because I've had a lot of people come to me and say, wow, I never knew he did this thing, for instance, right? Like I mean, I was amazed personally in what I was reading, like him giving entire speeches about being like, we have to cling to the deposit of faith. I'm like, that's something that Pope Francis said. I'm like, I would expect like St. Pius X to say that. Like,
yeah, but he'll
that's like every
say
other.
He'll say that in one breath, and then he'll have the biggest abortionist in Italy join the Pontifical Academy for Life in the next, and then he'll say something like Frociagine, and then he'll have James Martin at the Vatican the next day, and it'll be a big. And he does it every June on top of that during Pride Month, and it's like the amount of double speak and the amount of look, I understand what you're saying. It's like all you're hearing from all these different outlets is negativity about Pope Francis. So you want to say, okay, well, look, let's highlight the good things, right? And I've even seen Redeemed Zoomer, who's not Catholic, and he's like, you Catholics who think Francis is this awful thing, you don't know how good you have it with the stability of Francis. Like, he's not ordaining women, he's not allowing gay marriage, he's not, but to even have something like the blessing that what the heck document was that with the blessing the same-sex couple,
fiducia supplicans?
Yeah, it's like we're blessing the people but not the couples, but you can do it together with it. It's just we want our church to be clear, because so many people came into the church because the culture is collapsing and falling apart and pushing a birth control, and it's like the church is this beacon that's supposed to say, no, you can't actually do birth control. No. I don't care if people are saying same-sex marriage is okay. No, you can't do that. You want the church to be the rock, the foundation that actually teaches humanity the moral code, and seeing even the wishy-washy stuff in action versus the words themselves is really destructive to a lot of people, man. And it's a very tough thing to handle, especially as a Catholic who's a lifelong Catholic watching this stuff.
Yeah. I mean, what I would say is, that's not to say that there aren't charitable critiques to make of Pope Francis. In fact, I would say, let's excommunicate the Germans. I mean, frankly, I think Pope Francis should excommunicate the German episcopate, the Dutch episcopate, probably most of the Austrian episcopate too, and just clean house with them and stuff like that. And that
Yeah,
is
he's never going to be that guy. I have no delusions, right? He's never going to do that.
right.
He's never
right.
he's never
But-
even going to excommunicate the most heretical, but he will excommunicate. And I understand the Vigano thing. Vigano went too far. I mean, obviously, if you're out there saying the things Vigano's saying, like, you got to rein the guy in.
You're literally asking for it.
Yeah, you're begging for it, right? It's like, I get it. It's just, man.
But the thing about it is, now I do think that Pope Francis should punish the liberals more, and I think it is something where it's imprudent that there's not more of that going on. That is a charitable, as a son to a father, that is a charitable critique that I'd make. But even that being said, like with the whole Vigano thing, I mean, I think it was like 2017 or something, like he excommunicated like a pro-gay priest in Australia, like he defrocked him. And that was a huge thing. I remember there was like an Italian priest too who was like supporting gay marriage. He got defrocked. I think he might have gotten excommunicated, but at least if not excommunicated, he was completely laicized. Like he's not a priest anymore.
Wait, Joe. I wouldn't even say he went. My issue with Vigano was the Trump stuff, like the Trump American election stuff. Like that was when he lost me. I never took issue with the. I'll tell. Okay, so let's put it this way. Let's put authority and validity of Francis aside, right? Like seriously, put all the authority and the excommunication of Vigano aside. Who actually believes the authentic Catholic faith more, Vigano or Francis? And let's just be honest about it, right? Like the authentic Catholic faith that has been handed down from the apostles. Which one of those two men, which you have to take the authority stuff aside, right? Because we know what Vigano thinks of the Second Vatican Council. Like forget all of that stuff. I'm just talking about like the actual Catholic faith of Catholic morality and what the church has always taught. I would say Vigano actually sees the church for what it is more than Francis does it, and it almost seems like Francis.
Did Vigano see that before it became advantageous for him?
Okay,
like,
you could bring that up, yeah.
Because like he was a careerist historically, like.
Before he got booted from his position, he was silent and he went along to play along. And until that happened, then all of a sudden, I get that argument.
And I'm not judging him because I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm just saying there's indications that it could be that way.
Yeah, look, there's people. Look, guys, you're gonna see both sides, right? So by far, Francis, this person says Vigano. Like this is the reason we're having this conversation. Is because like we're all and that's kind of where I am. Where I went from blocking you guys to saying, okay, this is just a weird time, man. And like, how do you not love your Catholic brother who believes the Catholic faith? Like, how do you not love your Catholic brother, right? Like,
oh yeah, for sure, absolutely. Yeah, and I mean, not to sound like a broken record, I really am sorry with how I interacted with you guys when I woke up that day.
I don't even know why I blocked you. I really don't remember. I genuinely don't remember. I was probably just annoyed with the, like, I just saw the Francis is the most praised Pope ever stuff, and I was just like, these guys are just like, but I had to kind of get into the Gen Z mindset a little bit and understand what you guys were doing, I think.
Well, and it was one of those things, like when I woke up, like me and Christian are really, really good friends, right?
Yeah.
When I woke up that morning, because I think it all went down in the morning where we initially like were going back and forth on Twitter and then it was like stupid or whatever. And I felt bad after, but all I saw was Christian quote tweeting you. And I liked actually avoiding Babylon prior to that, but I saw him quote tweeting you about a Jewish guy speaking on the Novus Ordo, and just to say, with the stuff I study, that touched a sensitive.
This might be a good.
Like,
let's go this route, and then we'll get into the Fuentes stuff and Let's go this route. That's cool.
And me being facetious, not being facetious.
Do you remember
it was actually more for the YouTube TOS. I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah. Do you remember who I was talking about?
So it was
Eric Weinstein.
Eric
Oh, okay,
Weinstein.
okay.
Yes, Eric Weinstein. And all I saw, just from my perspective, all I saw is Christians being attacked, Christians getting in a fight with you. I got to defend my friend and attack, right? I wasn't factoring in I wasn't factoring in your goodwill and stuff like that when I did it, and that's why I felt so bad after. I was like, oh, come on, like
Yeah, but men should be able to trash each other a little bit and not be sensitive about it.
Yeah, no.
It shouldn't be like he said something about me, and if I overreacted, like I shouldn't have overreacted. Men should be able to, spar a little bit.
No, for sure. Well, and it was one of those things, one of the guys actually who inspired me to take up Catholic apologetics, and who he's one of my icons is E. Michael Jones.
Yeah.
Like E. Michael Jones, everyone knows him for Culture Wars, but he actually had a magazine before that I would almost say in some ways has been more influential on me, which is Fidelity magazine.
Mm-hmm.
And Fidelity magazine was cool because it was, again, it would defend Vatican II, it would defend the Pope, it would defend St. John Paul II, but it was very traditional too. Like they would bring up super politically incorrect quotes from saints. Like they weren't unwilling to sort of talk about like, hey, homosexuality is like an abominable sin. Like it's not just a thing like, oh, well, it's just kind of not ideal. It's like, no, this is like evil, right? Or like abortion is, atrocious. And seeing that approach, or seeing that from like Brent Bosel when he had Triumph magazine, right, with like William Marshner and those guys, it really inspired me, because I was like, these guys get it. Like they're totally just going to bat for the truth, and they've also got this beautiful attitude of obedience and stuff like that. And what I saw too is when I started to read those guys, I mean, a lot of people attacking the church are Jewish, right? And it's because it's like the reason they attack the church is because their religion hates Jesus so much that when they see the cosmic monarchy reflected in the papal monarchy, they're like, attack, slander.
Well, not just that. I think any Catholic or Christian that doesn't understand that, especially Zionism, is inherently against Catholicism. Yes. Like it is
absolutely
like what an awesome watershed moment when Gavin McInnes was debating Adam King.
Adam King, you got it.
Yeah. So and Ryan's in the chat right now. Ryan Katsu Rivera is in the chat right now. That watershed moment was so now my perspective on this question, because I've talked about it. Like as a millennial, I'm raised hearing post-World War II propaganda nonstop, right? Like we're watching movies like Sophie's Choice and things like that. So coming around was partially E. Michael Jones.
But not Schindler's List, because that's black and white and not allowed.
Yeah, I never watched Schindler's List. But yeah, it was E. Michael Jones actually is the one who awakened me to the Jewish revolutionary spirit. And then talking to Father Maudsley like blew my mind reading his book. And so, but really just understanding how adversarial Christendom is to Judaism. Like when you have the Messiah comes and these people reject the Messiah, like everything after that is them rejecting our understanding of the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, right?
They reinvented their religion for it.
Yeah, like we're saying, no. The God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the Messiah has come. And they're like, he's not the Messiah. Like there's such an adversarial relationship there that anyone who doesn't see that, you just don't get it. And with all the post-World War II propaganda, you can fall into the mindset of just, no, you can't criticize this at all. You can't criticize, but you have to be realistic about things, and you have to. Joe, I can't wait to call Anthony after this. Yeah. So, but I also, So, right. Okay. So we were highlighting Eric Weinstein in that episode, not to highlight, hey, look at what this Jews are. It was more just highlighting. It was to highlight the human understanding of, hey, there's something about ritual here, right? Like there's something deep and inherent, because I've pointed out a bunch of times, and people always probably get annoyed with me repeating my phrases, but we are not just Homo sapiens, we are Homo liturgicus. Like God literally created us to worship. That is what we are. We are man who was made to worship. So when we change the foundation of Christian civilization, the foundation of Christian civilization is the Mass. It is what transformed the face of the earth throughout history, right? So Christ comes, he institutes the Last Supper, and then you have these liturgies popping up. So when St. Paul is saying, hand on the traditions which were given to you, whether through word or mouth or through written through epistle, the word of mouth stuff he's talking about is liturgy. So all the apostles go out and they set up these liturgies. Now, these liturgies, it is how we embody the Christian faith. It is how you make the Christian faith live in your life. So you have this Mass goes through time, and it organically develops over time. It's not the same in the first century as it is in the fourth or fifth, but as it goes on, it's not that we're changing it. We're adding little things here and little things there to deepen the mystery. You do that up until 1968, 69, and then all of a sudden we just chuck that thing and we bring something very different in. And to me, it is such a pivotal moment in the culture. So to highlight something that Eric Weinstein's saying, it's not like pointing out something that's Juice said. It's pointing out something inherent in humanity that we see. Like humans need something deep, mystical, mysterious, and transcendent. And I don't think the new Mass is transcendent enough. It's very human, and it's very, it's just something that my mind has deeply thought about over the past 10 years specifically.
Well, and it's interesting because I think in some ways we might come from two different perspectives. Because for me, I remember actually the first time I attended the Novus Ordo. Yeah, I didn't know what TLM was. The TLM versus the Novus Ordo was. I actually had like a very incredible mystical experience. Like I
at a Novus Ordo.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
okay.
Definitely.
Okay, good.
It actually was just on. It was a campus Mass too. It, like wasn't even like a official church. It was just the chapel we had. And I'm like sitting there and I like started looking up at the ceiling, and it's almost like, not that I had like an actual vision, but it was like I almost saw like the stars in the sky, and understood like that is like Christ's body and blood up there. Like there is something
your St. Thomas
than
moment.
Like when
my Lord and my God. Yeah.
Legit. Absolutely. Oh my goodness. Absolutely. Like, because, Episcopalian liturgies, they had kind of tweaked their liturgy to be almost more like the Roman Rite. And so, I was familiar with a lot of the prayers and stuff like that, the Our Father and the Nicene Creed and what have you. But there was a difference in significance where it didn't feel like with Episcopalians doing communion, it's just something you eat because it's a ritual, right? It's like, oh, okay, this is maybe Christ's body or something. I don't really know. But with the body and blood of Christ up at the altar, I knew in my heart, like, that is something holy and that is sacred, and that is something that I'm like looking at. I'm almost like, because Moses and Aaron, right? They make this tent, right? And it's like you can't like look in the tent, you can't like just walk up to it, right? Because the ark's in there. I'm like looking at the Eucharist, and I'm like, that's not something I can just walk up and get, right? That's not just something I can walk up and receive. It's like there's this exclusivity to it that I want to participate in. And I was pissed as a Protestant when I heard I couldn't receive the Eucharist. And I remember I was like steaming the first time I went to Mass. I'm like, Catholics don't think I'm Christian or what have you. And then I remember actually Father Mike Schmitz, I watched his video on like why we couldn't receive the Eucharist. And he's like, because we want you to feel that hunger. We want you to be a little angry or like a little desire.
Yeah. I remember when my wife was going through RCIA, she felt that, but it built an appetite, right? Like it's what you're doing. You're building it's like, oh, I long for this thing now.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. And it's not just like in a psychological way, like, oh, I can't do the thing. Well, screw you. I want to go do it. It's like you want to be in part of it and incorporate it into it. And I just was so blown away at the Mass from that standpoint. And so from there, like I actually mostly attend the Novus Ordo now. Not on principle. I'll gladly attend a
No, it's
TLM any day of
convenience,
the week.
probably.
What'd you say?
Convenience, I would assume.
Oh yeah, like I don't have a car, so literally my 2
Yeah,
feet
it's
are everywhere I
convenience,
get. Yeah, and I just remember, I mean, we celebrated mass even recently on the tomb of St. John Paul II at Oriento.
Dude, I don't mean to interrupt you. I forgot to ask you
yeah.
this. How did your parents react to you becoming Catholic?
Oh man, it was a little rough at first, and not out of any disrespect towards them, but I remember my mom, like when I initially told my mom and my dad was like, "Oh, okay, that's cool. Like I'm cool with that." And my mom initially was okay, but then she came down the next morning into the kitchen and she said, "I don't want you to become Catholic because we won't go to heaven together." And I actually like I broke down and started to cry. Um
Now, were you 100% convinced at this point, though?
Yes,
Oh,
absolutely. I was
wow.
like,
Okay.
I'm going to become Catholic over like I people can maybe look at me sometimes and they're like, Pinesap has all the perfect guy or he gets too angry, what have you. And that's all true, right? I'm not a perfect guy. I'm a sinner and stuff like that. But there is one thing, no matter how bad I mess up or whatever, that I do want to make clear, and it's that I love Jesus with all my heart.
Yeah.
And I was willing to do anything to become Catholic. I was willing to die to become Catholic because the life that I did not have, Christ gave back to me. And for the rest of my life, like anything less than following him, I can't fathom or imagine. You know what I mean?
So, okay, so that was her initial reaction, but I'm assuming they toned down a little bit over time.
They did. And now, and I mean, they go to mass on vacation and stuff like that. And,
Oh,
and
they're open to it a little bit now.
yeah. Oh, they went to St. Augustine's church actually down the first Catholic church in America down in Florida for
Yeah.
mass. And they said it was beautiful. And then they took
That's
me
a
to the
beautiful
Savannah
parish.
Cathedral. Oh, sorry, Rob. Didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead, buddy.
I was just gonna say that's a beautiful parish in St. Augustine.
It is so incredible. And then the
Mhm.
Savannah Cathedral too. Oh my goodness. Like when they told me it was like a great parish, like we went to like a low mass, a low Novus Ordo mass just like one day of the week. And it was so quiet in there and so meditative. I just was blown away at the beauty. I was like,
Yeah.
this is incredible. I love this church.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Like even like whenever I hear there's tension at first, but then the parents are softening up. Like even Nick Cavazos, when
Sorry
we
about
talked
that.
with him, Nick Cavazos, his parents at first were like, "You can't do this," and now his parents go to adoration with him. It's like, it's one of those things. It's just like once one person in the family goes, you can't help but bleed that Catholicism into your conversations subtly, and you don't want to hit them ham-fisted, but you do subtly just you start to slowly give things over to them. Yeah, that's pretty all right. I didn't mean to derail you on the other conversation. I forgot what we were even talking about, but I had to jump in and ask that.
That is such a great contribution, Anthony. Thank you. Well, and it's so true, right? I mean, for my mom has been incredible. She'll send me Bible verses. She'll write. I remember she like made for my first day at work. She like made me lunch because I was back at my.
How do they feel
other
about the
home.
icons in your room?
Oh, she loves them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. My mom, honestly, anything like to do with Mary or whatever. My mom is not anti-Mary. She loves Mary.
Okay, good. That's good.
And honestly, she like. My dad and my mom are pretty much willing to believe, I think, everything about Mary and even like the sacraments and stuff like that. I think it's just that final unity, that almost like unexplained, like not logical, like just God's got to work in your heart kind of thing. And I think it's difficult because like my mom, I remember this growing up, watched a ton of Oprah. And as you know, Oprah would let people on her show all the time and stuff like that who would be like, oh, the Catholic Church is abusive and it's horrible and evil and stuff like that. And I think my mom hearing that thinks or not thinks, but had thought to herself before I converted, like, oh, it's like a shelter for pedophiles or what have you, which you can understand because if that's the only cultural, influence you're getting, you start to view Catholics like you view Mormons or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, Oprah's new age. All right, listen, here's what we're going to do. We're going to keep this at an hour and we're going to take this over to locals.
That sounds
Because
good.
I'm going to tell you what I saw today. I saw Pinesap stream yesterday, or maybe it was the day before or something. You did a 3-hour stream of consciousness on Catholic dating apps. And I'll tell you what my initial thought was when I saw that. It was 3 hours. That's a bit overwhelming. So what we do is we chop our show in half. And we do an hour here. And then the people who actually enjoy our show, they come over and they go to locals. What we're going to do is...
hold on. Before we move over, I have a question to ask about
Yeah,
Gen
of course.
Z language.
What do you mean? You've been quiet this whole show.
What the heck does skibbity mean?
Oh, this is great.
I actually don't know, to be completely honest with you. I have no idea. I have actually no idea.
I've learned what Riz is, but I don't know skibbity.
Well, Riz is important. Okay, yeah. So this is what I want to talk about.
You as an Italian, you know Riz just naturally.
It's look, especially I see a lot of the younger guys, man, and a lot of them are terminally online, and there's something about like with the Catholic dating thing. I think too many guys are like, well, I pray my rosary this many times a day, and I do, there's a lot of profilicity of holiness, right? Of
profilicity.
Profilicity. So putting on your profile and trying to, it's almost like virtue signaling publicly on your profile. So
here I thought you were actually using a real word.
It is a real word. Carefully curated profilicity. Something Cale Zeldin taught me. I'm not going to claim I thought of this one on my own. Carefully curating profilicity. So there's a lot of, hey, I'm doing all the holy things. Where's my chick? No, profilicity. Just look at it like that. Profilicity. There's a lot of, I'm doing all the holy things. Where's my chick? Where I do think a lot of it is about Riz. Yes. Yeah, a little bit. Right. And in my, all right, we'll do this on locals.
Okay, we're going to move to locals then.
Yeah, we're going to go to locals because I will share some stories on locals of just learning how to have that Riz a little bit. But yeah, we'll do that. We'll talk.
I think because we have so many new people,
we'll do it
Gen Z and Gropers. Let's do it free.
All right, so it's not behind a paywall, guys. So anybody that wants to watch is not behind a paywall, but you got to at least subscribe.
You won't be able to chat.
Yeah, you won't be able to comment, but you will be able to watch for free. We'll also leave it on Twitter. So if you guys want to watch it on Twitter, just go check my Twitter, Rob's Twitter, or the Avoiding Babylon Twitter. You guys could finish the conversation there. We're gonna get off YouTube so we could talk to people of the Old Covenant, the Amish, and some other things. So, all right, guys. Share the show, like the show, go to Rob and I's store,
shop.avoidingbabylon.com.
Get your Have You Accepted Mary as your personal mother and intercessor shirt, your Avoiding Pride shirt. Pride's almost over, so we're gonna have to come up with a new one for that.
Yeah.
Don wants to know why he's paying $5 because Don, if you ever stop paying that $5, I will see you at Mass on Sunday. And you won't be able to make eye contact with me.
Cousins Frankie, Jimmy,
yeah, Joey, Eddie,
Mikey,
they're all
Joey,
coming.
Eddie.
They're all coming to see you. All right, guys, we're gonna jump over to the other side. We're gonna end the YouTube stream so people don't get overwhelmed seeing more than an hour on there. All right, take us.